The first time I heard anyone say 2026 bunker, I was in line at a coffee shop. Two men in black suits and sunglasses stood ahead of me. They looked like extras from Men in Black, the kind of guys who never blend in as much as they think they do. "We'll need the updated spec to be ready," one of them said. The other nodded, calm and businesslike. They sounded like project managers talking about lead times and delivery windows. I took my coffee and left. I don't socialize with the competition. I design underground structures for a living. I don't pour concrete or drive excavators. I sit at a desk and draw what other people build. Rooms, corridors, reinforcement grids, mechanical layouts, access routes. It's exact work. Measured, checked, adjusted. People picture bunkers as cinematic, vault doors, flashing alarms, military hardware. Most of them are basically basements that never stopped growing. For years, that's what I drew: storm shelters. Safe rooms, panic rooms, places to hide from tornadoes, house fires, break-ins. Solid, quiet, simple. Then the projects changed. Around the same time, stories about rich people building below ground started showing up more often. The most visible example was Mark Zuckerberg. Reporting about his Hawaii property described a large compound with an underground addition. Planning documents mentioned reinforced concrete, controlled access, independent systems. When asked, he called it a storm shelter, just good preparedness. Most people bought that and moved on. In my field, nobody did. The scale alone gave it away. That wasn't a side feature. That was a core design decision, and he wasn't the only one. Sam Altman has openly talked about preparing for worst-case scenarios. In interviews, he mentions a reinforced basement and personal contingency plans, not as panic, but as prudence. Jeff Bezos barely mentions anything at all, but reporting on his properties describes estates built for isolation, privacy, and self-sufficiency. The language is always careful, secure, private, hardened, never bunker. Then there are the projects that never make headlines. I've heard contractors and consultants talk about wealthy clients quietly buying remote land, not for vacation homes, not working ranches, just acreage. In New Zealand, there have been documented cases of foreign buyers putting in underground structures under cover of agricultural or storage permits. From the road, the properties looked ordinary. Underground, the plans were elaborate. In the Midwest, decommissioned missile silos were sold off decades ago. Some became private underground homes. One widely covered example was turned into a multi-level residence with thick concrete walls, independent power, stored water, and controlled access between floors. The articles focused on the luxury. The drawings were about survivability. In Europe, there are houses carved into hillsides and mountains, marketed quietly as secure homes. The interiors look like high-end residences. The systems beneath them are layered and redundant. I've worked on projects like that. At first, the jobs looked familiar: storm shelters, reinforced basements, hidden rooms. Clients always had a reason on hand: fires, unrest, natural disasters, pandemics. It didn't matter to the drawings. Over time, the requests shifted. The rooms went deeper. The walls got thicker. The budget stopped being discussed. Clients stopped asking, "How long will this take?" and started asking, "When will it be done?" By then I was consulting for a specialty firm. No website. No public portfolio. You found them if someone sent you their way. Their work: fences, gates, hardened buildings, and underground spaces designed around one idea: keep people out. They brought me on for drafting and review. Nothing sensitive, they said. The first project they handed me was called a secure storage unit. It had redundant power, filtered air, and a sealed interior room with no windows. The second project had the same core layout. So did the third: different states, different climates, different clients. The similarities stood out. The language started changing too. Clients didn't call them shelters anymore. They called them units: Unit A, lower unit, core unit, service unit. The firm adopted the terminology like it had always been there. Then dates started appearing in internal notes. Operational readiness by 2026, post-2026 access limitations, 2026 rated systems. I asked once what 2026 rated meant. New standard, someone said. Don't worry about it, no one explained further. In this business, you're paid to draw what's requested and make sure it meets spec. You don't need context to put rebar in the right place. Then one night, a revised set of drawings hit my inbox. They were marked urgent, heavy red lines, highlights everywhere. The basic layout hadn't changed, but critical systems had, routes rerouted. Extra layers added, components swapped. A single note sat on the cover sheet: apply updates to all 2026 builds. Do not discuss changes unless asked. No name, no signature. After that, I started comparing projects more closely. Different firms, nearly identical patterns, similar timelines. Certain features started popping up over and over. Other features quietly vanished. When I asked questions, answers got foggy or redirected. I asked one client what he planned to store in his sealed inner room. Equipment, he said. What kind, I asked, not something you need to know. I went back through older plans. Early jobs were simple. Newer ones had more systems, more contingencies, more buried space. Nothing on paper ever said why. That part was universal. I kept drawing, it's what I do. But more and more, what I was being asked to design didn't look like backup anymore. It looked like expectation. The call came while I was half inside the back of my truck, reaching for a tape measure that had rolled behind a stack of plan tubes. My phone buzzed twice, unknown number. Ohio area code, I answered with my shoulder wedged against the door frame. Yeah, this is Daniel. A man's voice came through steady, almost flat, like he'd rehearsed it. Is this Daniel? He asked anyway. Yes, I said. My name is Martin Hale, he said. A colleague gave me your name. I have a private underground structure on a property south of Cleveland. I want an inspection, systems, integrity, readiness. Are you available this week? Hale asked. I can be, I said. How big are we talking? Large, Hale said. You come highly recommended. I'd like you to walk it yourself. Do you have plans you can send over first? I asked. You'll get everything on site, Hale said. When you arrive, you'll be met, you'll be escorted. You'll have access. He gave me an address and a time, 2 days out, 9 a.m., then he hung up. I climbed out of the truck, tape measure in my hand, staring at the blank call screen like it might explain something. It didn't. I wrote the address down anyway. 2 mornings later, I left North Olmsted before 7. I took 71 south, then cut over onto smaller roads just like he'd instructed. Warehouses, gas stations, faded diner signs. Then flat fields and bare trees stretching out on both sides. At one point, my GPS showed a blue dot crawling through a grid of roads labeled only with numbers, not names. The address brought me to a 2-lane highway without a shoulder. No mailbox, no gate, just a gravel entrance that could have belonged to a farm. I turned in. The driveway wasn't curved or scenic. Just long and straight, gravel between shallow ditches. The property opened up as I drove, mown fields, trimmed edges, trees spaced deliberately instead of growing where they wanted. The house came into view after a minute. Modern lines, not huge, expensive in a quiet, confident way, no stone columns, no manor house nonsense. I parked near a detached garage. A man waited by the front steps, suit jacket, white shirt, no tie, hands folded in front of him like he'd been standing there long enough to decide not to fidget. He came down as I got out. Daniel, he said. That's me, I answered. Martin Hale gave me a single firm handshake and let go. Thank you for coming, he said. I appreciate you making the drive. Not a problem, I said. You mentioned an inspection. You want a full commissioning style walkthrough. Yes, Hale said. I want confirmation that what was built matches the spec. And I want confirmation the systems perform as intended. He turned toward the house. This way. Inside, the place felt cold without being actually cold. No TV, no music, no cooking smell. No clutter by the entry. The walls were almost bare. Just one anonymous landscape photo that might as well have come with the frame. No small talk, no coffee offered. He led me down a hallway and opened what looked like a closet door. Behind it was a stairwell, concrete steps, wide enough for 2 men side by side, a solid metal handrail anchored into the wall. Recessed lights every 10 feet, all edges sealed and finished, no raw construction left exposed. Hale started down. It's a long way, he said. How far? I asked. You'll see, he said. I followed. The stairwell didn't plunge straight down. It ran in long flights between identical landings. Same dimensions, same rotation, same light spacing. It was built for regular use, not as a cramped escape hatch. After a minute, the house vanished behind us completely. No faint HVAC hum, no floor creaks overhead. Just our footfalls and a soft, constant rush of air moving behind the walls. I glanced up once. The top was out of sight. We kept going. The air cooled and dried as we descended. It smelled like cured concrete and clean plastic. Filtered air always has that dead, after-hours office smell. I checked my watch without meaning to. We'd been going down for about 3 minutes. Hale never slowed. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a corridor with a ceiling higher than the one upstairs. The walls were concrete but faced with smooth white panels, industrial but finished. The The floor was polished concrete, sealed, not decorative. The corridor ran straight ahead, lit evenly, with doors spaced along one side. Simple labels marked each one. Unit of Service Mech 1. I stopped just inside, letting my eyes adjust to the scale. This is bigger than I expected, I said. That's why you're here, Hale said. I pulled out my notebook. The routine took over. Let's start with power, I said. Primary intake and transfer, Hale pointed down the hall. This way, we passed a couple of doors and stepped into a room that hummed with low mechanical life. Fans, vibration, the steady presence of running systems you feel through your shoes. 2 generators sat on isolation mounts, both housed in sound-dampening enclosures. Clean fuel lines. A battery bank along the far wall, tied into inverters and a distribution panel that belonged in a hospital, not a house. I read the labels, I traced the redundancy. 2 gens, I said. And this battery setup isn't just backup, it's a full second system. Yes, Hale said. Fuel storage, I asked. He took me to the next room. Tanks. Not a couple of drums, proper storage tanks meant to sit for years. Filtered intake, I asked. Yes. Manual start capability. Yes, I wrote it all down. Back at the electrical panels, every breaker was labeled by zone. No masking tape, no scribbled marker, everything printed and precise. The workmanship screamed commercial install. This is built like a small facility, I said. It is, Hale said calmly. Who did the work, I asked. A firm that understands discretion, he said. I let that go. Next was air. He brought me to an air handling room so clean you could have eaten off the floor. Staged pre-filters, HEPA units, a section marked for chemical filtration, spare filters in sealed packaging. A bypass arrangement that would let air route around a failed unit. How many intakes topside, I asked. 4, Hale said. Where, I asked. On the property, he said. Hidden. Protected, can I see them, I asked. Not today, Hale said. I noted that too. Water came next, storage tanks, filtration, oversized plumbing, redundant pumps, a UV treatment unit. Spare parts sorted neatly into labeled bins like a maintenance shop. This isn't a storm hideout, I said. This is long-term occupancy. He nodded. How many people is it designed for, I asked. Enough, Hale said. I didn't push, kept moving. The layout widened out as we went. Side corridors branched into living quarters, not stacked bunks, actual rooms, beds, desks, built-in storage. Bathrooms that didn't feel like airplane labs, a kitchen with commercial-grade equipment, a pantry bigger than my first apartment. A medical room with sealed cabinets, an exam table, oxygen, refrigerators, a comms room with hardwired lines, a rack of equipment, and thick shielding in the walls. I ran my hand along the paneling and felt the density. Faraday, I asked. Yes, he said. I wrote it down. We passed doors marked core access and lower unit. The deeper we went, the less it felt like a shelter and the more it felt like a facility. The ceiling stayed high, the lighting stayed neutral, airflow was balanced, no stale corners. Everything about the design said this wasn't meant for a single bad night, it was meant for routine use. I checked fire suppression, floor drains, door seals. Penetrations through concrete where pipes and conduit ran. I hunted for weak points and didn't see any. At one point I stopped and faced Hale. How long has this place been occupied? I asked. It's been tested, he said. It's complete. Tested by who? I asked. He didn't answer. He checked his watch, then glanced down the corridor. I have something to handle upstairs, he said. You can finish your inspection. He pulled a slim access card from his jacket and handed it to me. This will open every door you need, he said. Take your time. I'll come back down when you're done. I nodded. He turned and walked toward the stairwell. His footsteps echoed for a while, then dissolved into the ambient hum. I stood alone in the corridor, surrounded by concrete and systems and silence. I kept going, following the same pattern I always use. I moved through the remaining corridors, opening what needed opening, checking seals, feeling along wall cutaways where mechanical runs exposed concrete thickness. Mapping drainage points along the floors. The standard never dipped, no corners cut, no sections that felt rushed or patched in later. Several rooms were clearly meant for daily life, a laundry room with machines bolted to reinforced pads. Storage shelves labeled but empty, a food prep area scaled for steady use, not just emergency rations. I filled page after page in my notebook. The lower unit stretched farther than I expected. The corridor narrowed slightly, then widened again as it neared the end. The lighting changed. Fixtures were set deeper into the ceiling, giving off a softer, more indirect light. At the end of the corridor was a single room. Its door stood open. Inside, the space was larger than the others and mostly bare. One wall held shelving, another had a work table. In the center of the room, bolted to the slab, stood a low metal podium. A book rested on top. I paused in the doorway. The book didn't match anything else in the room. It wasn't stored or covered or labeled. It just sat there. I walked up to it. It lay open in the middle, pages spread evenly as if someone had placed it that way on purpose. I touched the edge of the paper. It was thick, stiff, not modern stock. The page edges were rough, hand-cut. The binding material was pale and smooth, drawn tight around the spine. The cover itself was molded into the faint shape of a skull, not glued on, not ornamental, but formed into the material. I leaned over the open pages. Columns of dense text filled the spread. Diagrams were tucked between paragraphs, clean, straight lines, measured spacing, repeating symbols arranged in deliberate patterns. Then I noticed the illustrations. The figures didn't match human anatomy. Some had horned heads, some had distorted faces. The drawings were detailed, not symbolic or stylized. At the top of the page, centered over the columns, was a number. 2026. I read it twice. It wasn't scribbled later. It was built into the layout, aligned perfectly with the text under it. After that, the rest of the bunker stopped mattering. The book had my full attention. I studied the diagrams, the figures, the symbols repeated around the margins like a structured language. The layout looked like instructions, steps meant to be followed. I didn't turn the page right away. I left my hand resting on the podium and stayed where I was. Eventually, I slid my fingers under the page and turned it. The next spread carried only a short block of text. When ancient vows are cast aside and signs return across the sky, the sealed will rise, the count aligned to 26 when men must die. Underneath was a full-page illustration. A man knelt on bare ground, his knees pressed into the earth, hands braced in front of him, fingers splayed, weight forward, his head tilted up. High above, far into a blank sky, an angel hovered. Its back was to him. Wings stretched wide, filling almost the entire upper portion of the page. Their scale made the kneeling man look small and fragile beneath. The man stared upward. The angel stayed oriented away, angled as if already moving on. Nothing in the scene suggested it would turn back. I didn't flip ahead. The number hung in my thoughts. I turned the page. The next illustration moved underwater, not surface scenes, depth. The ocean was drawn in cross-section, sliced from sky to seabed. Light faded quickly, pale strokes at the top thickening into heavy lines as the water darkened, until the bottom third of the page was almost solid black. Something huge coiled in the middle of the water column. Scale was shown by comparison. Tiny ships rode the surface, reduced to thin silhouettes. One hull broke apart, folding inward. Another vessel angled stern up, bow dragged below as if pulled from beneath. Below them, an immense body wound through the dark. The creature's form was massive and slow-bending, layered with broad, armored segments. Ridges ran along its length like overlapping plates. Its head rose out of the black. Wide and blunt, a wedge of bone and muscle. Its mouth opened vertically, splitting from jaw to crown. Inside, dense rows of short teeth packed tight together. A single pale eye sat far back, round and unblinking, fixed forward. Its body continued down into total darkness past the edge of the page. I turned the page. The water vanished. The next set of drawings looked up instead of down. The sky was left mostly blank, no clouds, no stars. Hanging in that emptiness were spheres, perfectly round, some small, some large. All drawn with clean, smooth curves. Several were shaded a vivid blue. One illustration showed the inside of an aircraft cockpit. Through the windshield, a blue sphere hovered directly ahead of the nose, close enough to fill most of the view, glowing evenly. Another showed a blue sphere pacing a wingtip, holding exact position. More pages, spheres over open ocean, spheres above farmland, spheres off the edge of coastlines. A series of drawings showed a blue sphere descending straight into the sea. The surface remained smooth, the water closed behind it without a ripple. As I flipped through, the details stayed consistent. I thought about the news clips. Pilots describing objects that matched their speed, then stopped dead. Released footage, reports of glowing blue orbs entering and exiting the ocean. The drawings matched those stories almost exactly. I turned the page. The next section went underground. These pages were cross-sections of earth and concrete, layers peeled back to show buried rooms and corridors. Walls, ceilings, rebar, sealed doors, all drawn with the same precise hand as the mechanical diagrams. Outside those structures stood figures. They were taller than the entrances, measured against doors and ladders and hatches, 10 feet maybe more. Their bodies were entirely bone, not loose skeletons, solid, fused structures. Skulls elongated and smooth, eye sockets deep and hollow. Rib cages wrapped inward to form rigid shells around their torsos. Long limbs ended in fused, blade-like claws. In one illustration, a clawed hand rested flat against a bunker wall. In another, a figure leaned close to a sealed door, head tilted as if listening for a weakness. One scene showed multiple figures hovering just above the surface, ringing a buried structure. Wings extended outward and up. The wings were made of interlocking bone segments, stiff and wide. Another drawing showed a bone figure gripping a human on the surface, lifting the body straight up. Below them, the bunker remained intact and closed. None of the images showed those things breaching the structures. They were always outside, pressed to walls, above hatches, clustered at entrances that never opened. I turned the page. A single massive serpent filled the next spread. Its body was thick and muscular, each coil stacked over the last. Large, smooth scales ran the length. The head was broad and triangular. Its eyes were set wide and forward, shaded a flat, bright red. Its mouth gaped open. The throat widened quickly, drawn deep and untextured, a tunnel. One illustration showed a person halfway inside, legs still visible, arms pinned by the snake's coils. Another showed a second figure fully swallowed, body shape faintly outlined inside the serpent as it slid downward. The final image in that sequence showed the creature alone, midsection distended. Red eyes staring straight out, I turned the page. The next section began with a single centered word. Survival underneath was a short verse, set apart from the surrounding text. Keep gold at hand when the sky burns red. It buys you time, it buys the dead. Let silver stand for blood and bone. If you must strike, you strike alone. I read it once and stayed very still. Gold to bargain, silver to kill. I thought of the price charts that kept popping up lately, whether I wanted to see them or not. Gold ticking higher. Silver moving sharper, spiking in ways it hadn't in years. The official reasons were unchanged. Inflation, debt, central bank moves, market fear. Those reasons had always been enough. A few days earlier, I'd had a video autoplay while I worked. Some guy talking about gold and silver again, same script he'd been using for years. Only now, the numbers on screen matched his tone. He talked about physical metal, about shortages. I remembered flicking past it without care. Standing in that bunker, looking at that page, I wondered how many people already knew what was coming. I thought about the jobs I'd taken, the bunkers that went deeper every year, the storage rooms left empty on purpose, shelves waiting to be filled with something particular. I thought about how my clients had changed their questions from why to how soon. Was this why metals were climbing the way they were? Not just because of budgets and interest rates, but because a small circle of people had advanced notice of something far worse than a market correction. Enough. I closed the book and left it on the podium. Nothing in the room changed. The concrete didn't flex, the air didn't shift. That mattered. Because as convincing as those pages were, as detailed and consistent as every drawing seemed, this was still a book. A strange one, sure, but a book, not evidence, not data, not proof. People have written persuasive prophecies for centuries, end-of-the-world timelines that never landed. We're still here. This had to be the same. A book couldn't explain metals markets. It couldn't explain naval videos or pilot testimonies, or why wealthy people everywhere were suddenly more interested in going down than out. It couldn't fully account for how specific some of those images felt. I told myself it wasn't real, couldn't be. Even as I did, part of me pushed back, not because I believed, but because the pages didn't read like someone trying to convince anyone. They read like someone documenting, recording, not selling. I shook my head and turned away from the podium. You've read it. The voice came from behind me. I turned. Hale stood a few steps back, hands folded in front of him exactly as they'd been when I first arrived. I'm sorry, I said quickly. It was open and I shouldn't have. No, he said. It's all right. He didn't sound annoyed. He didn't sound surprised. I wanted you to, he said. He glanced past me at the podium, then met my eyes again. You've seen what's coming, he said. You mean the story? I asked. The book, yeah, I read a few pages. It's creepy, but I gestured at the podium. It's a book, I said. That's all it is. He let me talk until I had nothing left to add. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. Come with me, he said. I want to show you something. He turned before I answered. We didn't use the main corridor. He led me through a narrower service passage I hadn't opened yet. Lower ceiling. lights spaced farther apart. We went down another flight of stairs. This level wasn't dressed like the others. No wall panels, no paint, just raw concrete, bare floor. Our footsteps echoed farther. At the end of the hall stood a single door, steel, overbuilt. Reinforced, a small window at eye level, thick glass behind a sliding metal shutter. Hale stopped beside it. "I'm going to open the shutter," he said quietly. I wouldn't look for long. He slid the panel aside. Something waited on the other side of the glass. My brain grabbed for categories and came up empty. It wasn't that the thing moved toward us. It didn't acknowledge us at all. That made it worse. My chest tightened, my mouth dried, my hands curled into fists on their own. Every basic instinct I had told me to get away from that door. I stepped back. "That's enough," I said. He slid the panel closed at once. We stood there a few seconds in the ringing silence. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't ask how it got there. I didn't want answers I'd never be able to put down again. We retraced our steps. By the time we reached the finished level, the bunker's earlier strangeness felt almost normal. Hale paused near the room with the podium. "I brought you here because I don't know these systems the way you do," he said. "Power, air, water, redundancy, that isn't my area." He reached into his jacket and took out two small objects. Tickets, they were rigid gold foiled, catching the overhead light as he turned his hand. No text, no logo, just the number 2026 stamped on each one. He held them out on his open palm. "You and one other," he said. "Choose carefully." He let that hang between us. "You can stay here," he continued. "Run the systems, maintain everything. Make sure it all works when it has to." Then he stepped past me and headed toward the stairs without looking back. His footsteps faded the same way as before. In the end, I left. The climb up felt longer than the way down, though the landings and lights were the same. Outside, the property looked unchanged. Quiet grass, measured trees. The house sitting calmly above everything I'd just seen. My truck waited where I'd left it. I got in, closed the door, turned the key. I didn't look back as I rolled down the gravel drive. I didn't slow at the road. I followed the same anonymous routes out, fields and trees sliding by on either side. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I didn't say a word. That brings us to now. I'm telling you this because I've made up my mind. I took his offer. I'm going back, and I'm bringing my son, Julian. He's 8. Last night after dinner, I sat with him on the couch and reached for one of his older books, a picture book about monsters. The kind where the creature always lurks half hidden in the background of each page while the story pretends not to notice. I told him I'd read to him. He leaned against my side, eyes on the pictures while I worked through the lines. He didn't say much, just followed along, turning his head when I turned the page. When we reached the illustration where the monster fills almost the entire frame, I closed the book instead of finishing. I told him we were going to leave soon, not a trip, not a vacation. We were going somewhere to stay. He looked at the closed book, then up at me. "Where are we going, Dad?" he asked. "Somewhere we'll be safe from monsters," I said. I told him it was a place built to keep people safe, deep underground. I kept my voice even. I said he could bring anything he wanted, as long as it fit in one bag. He nodded once, stood up, and went to his room. I heard drawers opening, the soft sound of things being moved, then his backpack zipper. When he came back, the bag was half full, clothes shoved in wrong, his monster book wedged on top. I told him we'd leave in the morning. He nodded again and went to bed. After he was asleep, I stood in his doorway and watched him breathe. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that this is what fathers are supposed to do when danger is coming. My truck is fueled and ready. We'll be leaving soon. I hadn't planned on telling anyone. The simplest choice was to load the truck, drive away, and let the world figure itself out. But I couldn't live with that, not after what I'd seen, not after being warned in a way most people never will be. So this is my warning to you. I know things are hard, money's tight. People are busy and tired, and everything feels more fragile than it used to. Talk to the people around you, the ones you actually trust, friends, neighbors, family. If you can, band together. Make a plan that doesn't depend on everything working the way it always has. Choose one place you can all get to. Think about food. Think about shelter. Think about how you'd protect each other if you had to. Don't assume someone else will show up and sort it out. And if you're able, get some gold or silver, even a single coin. In that book, it wasn't presented as investment advice. It was presented as a tool, a condition of survival. I don't fully understand how any of it is supposed to work. I'm not sure explanations matter much anymore. Preparation might. I have seen what's coming. Do what you can, just do what you can, and get ready. Hey, this is Steven. I just wanted to say thank you for all the support in 2025. I hope 2026 turns out to be a good year for all of us and that we don't, get eaten by demons. Good night.